Planning Board for April 1st, 2021. And we will start with roll call, please.
I don't see
Doing
what's
roll
on
call.
Chairman LaRue,
Here.
Vice Chairman Peppa, Member Clerk Raymond, Member Covino,
Here.
Member Gaffney,
Here.
Member Espaillo,
Here.
and Member Rappaport.
Present.
Okay, and we would now like to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone could please join us all together now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. The Town of Burlington will be holding the April 1st meeting of the Planning Board as a virtual electronic meeting due to the current state of emergency due to the COVID-19 virus. As such, the Governor issued an executive order on March 12th, 2020, authorizing remote meetings under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20.
The meeting is held via WebEx and is accessible as follows. The link is also available on the Planning Board website and the posted agenda on the town calendar. It's townofburlington.webex.com. The meeting number is 129-689-9513. Meeting password 1645. You can also join by phone 617-315-0704. The meeting is also broadcast on BCAT government channel, which can be found on Comcast 99, RCN 15, Verizon 41, and streamed on Facebook Live via the BCAT Facebook page. The public will be able to make comments during the hearing.
All right, so do we need roll call to take this out of order?
No,
No,
you don't need
okay.
roll call for that.
Then we
It's
all
all
in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, all in favor. Item 7N is a public hearing, application for approval of an amendment to a definitive subdivision plan 4 and 5 Redmond Street. Murray Hills Incorporated is the applicant.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead, Paul.
No, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this matter to the Planning Board meeting of April 15th, 2021, as requested in an email by the applicant dated April 1st, 2021. Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
You do need roll call here, so I
Oh, we do.
apologize. So Rita, if you can do roll call. I'm sorry. You do need
I'll do a roll call. Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba, Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espaillo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport. So moved, I believe.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is citizens' time. If there is anyone here who would like to speak on a matter that is not on our agenda, please identify yourself now.
I would.
Marty Pearson, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm here, Madam Chairman, because of something that has happened in Burlington that I find extremely upsetting. I assume that you know a little bit about the development that is being discussed at Richardson Road. And I'm just talking to you folks because I want to know the story that the residents of Richardson Road, who will be very affected by this new 4-story condo complex that would be crammed into their neighborhood, did not know about the process in which it was approved. The Burlington Board of Selectmen met on March 11th, 2019, 2 years ago, to talk about it. They reviewed some documents submitted by the developer, voted to support the project, and sent a letter to the State Housing Agency on May 4th. Now, the selectmen did not hold a public hearing. The residents of the neighborhood were not notified about the plan, nor were they invited to the meeting. None of them knew about the proposal. In addition, no one on the planning board staff, the town meeting, the land use committee, or the town meeting moderator were told about the project. After the state approved the plan, the selectmen met last year, January 13th, and gave a final approval. Again, there was no public hearing, no notice to the residents, no town agencies were notified. Instead, a decision about a 24-unit apartment complex being put in a residential neighborhood was completely silenced. There was no notice to the community at all. When the project came before the Zoning Board of Appeals this January, the residents were finally told about the project, and it is a nightmare. And the building that is being discussed, we're not talking about 24 apartment, duplexes or single family houses. We're talking about a giant apartment building being put into a single family residence complex. And it is so oversized for the site. It's just 3 acres on the site, and so poorly located that the developer has had to ask the Zoning Board of Appeals for 37 waivers of various guidelines from Burlington's development. And these go from changing the site zoning from residential single family to multifamily, to waiving rules about things like how steep a lot can be. Now, the scariest part of this whole mess is that if the selectmen can bypass residents, bypass other town bodies, and just put a clearly oversized apartment complex into this little neighborhood, then they can do the same thing on any 3-acre lot in any neighborhood in Burlington without anyone knowing about it until the very end of the process, when the residents have to hire a lawyer and under the gun from a lawyer who is working for a developer. And it just seems to me an outrage that there was no democratic part in this process. In Burlington, that's not how we do stuff. And I'm asking not only members of the planning board, but also any viewers who are watching this meeting, if you would contact your favorite selectman and request that he call the Zoning Board of Appeals and ask them to just turn down this undemocratic condo project, you'd be doing the town a great favor, because this is not the way we should be making housing decisions, and it's not the way in which residents ought to be treated. They ought to be able to have a say in what goes on in their neighborhood. And this neighborhood is just being run over by a Mack truck. And so I'll finish my presentation, but I just really wanted you all to know about this terrible thing that's going on.
Monty, this is Barbara. Thank you for coming. This is a project that we're aware of, and as you said, it's a project that we, as it stands now, do not have authority over. But it is something that we have concern about. Unfortunately, right now, the application is not complete, so it is difficult for us to offer comment or advice to the body that is in charge, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals, but we do intend to review it very carefully once the application is completed. And then at that time, this board will consider whether or not we want to weigh in with advice. Again, we do not have authority, so we can offer advice and support or non-support, but that is something that the Zoning Board of Appeals can take or leave as they see fit.
Right.
But thank you for bringing this to our attention.
You know, just one other thing is that you know how much goes into the traffic planning studies and things like that. I mean, this is an apartment complex where they're projecting like 50 cars or more. And Richards, and it's on a dead end, so they'll only be on Richardson Road. They will then go down winding Richardson Road to another street, I don't remember the name of that, and they then go down the hill next to the funeral home to Wynn Street, which is a very busy street, and there is no traffic light there, right? I mean, there's a flashing yellow light, but there's no traffic light there. And so the idea of putting this complex in there with almost no access to the main road is just violates all of the kind of traffic things that you folks carefully go over. Anybody who follows the planning board knows that these are big deals that you guys follow. And instead, it's being decided based on waivers. Waiver this, waiver that. It's crazy. Thank you, Madam
Yes.
Chairman.
Thank you, Monty. And just for the people who are listening that may not be aware of how this project came to be, the reason it did not come to the planning board under the normal process is because it is coming as a 40B. So because it's a 40B, which is a friendly 40B, which means at least 25% of those units will be affordable, it does not come to the planning board. It was sent, as you said, by the Board of Selectmen to the state. And at this point, the Zoning Board of Appeals sort of steps into the shoes of the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, all the other entities, sorry about my dog, normally review such projects. And the Zoning Board of Appeal has to handle this all by themselves.
Yeah, even the dog's upset.
So this is Monty, this is Kristen. I'm involved just kind of to help them get through department commenting, and as the chairman mentioned that we've been waiting on some materials to really begin a robust review. They have hired a peer reviewer, but they haven't begun either. From what I understand, they will have a piece of it opening at their April 6th meeting, but continue the bulk of the discussion till April 20th. Certainly check with the Board of Appeals. But April 20th, I believe, is the next date that they anticipate any substantive discussion. So I certainly would, as this project is with the Board of Appeals, tune into the 6th, but definitely the 20th to offer comments that you may have, anyone on this call or watching.
Great. Thank you, Kristen.
Should I move on to announcements, perhaps,
Yes,
Barbara?
thank you. Sorry for the delay. I had to let the loud dog out. That's where I was.
Understandable. So, announcements. So, the signed bylaw subcommittee is going to be meeting on April 5th at 5:30 via Zoom. Early voting for the townwide election begins April 5th through the 9th, and that happens at the Grandview Farm Hall, and that's during normal town hall office hours. So check the website for our hours, and that's when you can vote early. The annual town election is April 10th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and polling is at the Burlington High School. We'll be having a housing choice legislation update with our town council on April 14th at noon, and that's via WebEx. The zoning bylaw review committee next meets April 14th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. Also, just kind of wanted to get an update from people. Yesterday, there was a demonstration on the Common in support of Asian American and Pacific Islander community here in Burlington. And I know that Barbara was there and Mike was there, and I didn't know if you guys wanted to give an update to all of us about how that went.
Thank you, Liz. Actually, I would really like to hand this over to Mike Espeo, who was a speaker at the event and can update us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it was a nice event on the Common last night, put on by the Burlington Equity Coalition, the Burlington Interfaith Clergy, and Burlington Against Racism. I saw a lot of residents there, and I saw a lot of people here on the call today. Barbara was there, and I saw Ed Parsons, and I saw Monty all in attendance. And it was a well-run event just to show solidarity for our Asian American and Pacific Islander friends, neighbors, and community members. As many of you may know, that over the past year, since last March of 2020, during the pandemic, there have been over 3,800 incidents of anti-Asian American hate incidents. So our Asian American Pacific Islander brothers and sisters have had an even tougher pandemic that's been tough enough for everyone. So it was a nice event. It was, really nice to see all the people come out. The speakers were excellent for the most part, and nice to see a good turnout from the community and support from the community. So just one of those nice things about Burlington, and I was happy to be there. So thanks to everyone who attended, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mike. And our own Mike did provide very powerful testimony as well. You did a nice presentation, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just
So,
have one more, one more announcement
Sure.
on behalf of Melissa Tantakis and the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
They will be holding the Town Center Placemaking Playbook presentation by the consultant at noon on April 21st. So we'll send an information out, but just to let everyone know, mark your calendars for noon, April 21st for the Town Center Placemaking Playbook presentation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We do not have any legal notices or non-approvals or administrative matters, so we're moving on to item 7A, I think, on our agenda. Sorry, need to get rid of that staple. 7A, which is a public hearing to amend the South Avenue 1 Planned Development PD District zoning bylaw use table to permit the integration of new uses applicable to parcel C only. Robert Benditson, trustee of the Benditson Portsmouth Realty Trust, dated November 25th, 1981. Thomasville Limited Partnership and Burlington Crossing Retail Business Condominium Trust is the applicant. Kristen?
Excuse me.
Oh,
Whoop.
sorry.
Go-
Please, no, go ahead, Mr. Attorney Buckley, please go
Yep.
ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. For the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Bronstein. I have with me this evening Christine Hung from my office, who has done most of the work on this. This is a technical amendment to try to restart that corner property. I think at the last meeting where there was a joint hearing between land use zoning bylaw and the planning board, we went through some of the issues. So maybe we'll just quickly walk through. This is a site context map, which will show that the retail site, again, this was a PDD that was done, I believe, in the late 90s. And at the time, there were limited uses, and it was divided into 3 parcels, A, B, and C, with specific uses on each parcel. The retail parcel is at the corner of 2nd Avenue and Middlesex Turnpike. And currently today, the only operation that is there is Long's Jewelers. Prior to that, there was Gentleman's Warehouse and I believe Thomasville Furniture. Since they have left, the building has been very unresponsive to the marketplace because the next slide will show, I believe, the limited uses. If you could go one more, Brady. Yeah, so you can see some of the, it's a very limited use template that could be utilized on the property, and you know, retail is limited. Banks, we certainly have enough banks, and restaurants. It just has not been responsive to the marketplace. So what we would like to do is put a use table in place that would be consistent with what is permitted in the general business district with, and I think the next slide will show some of the uses, Brady, which are some of the uses that would be permitted under that zoning template to try to broaden the market and see if that area can be reinvigorated. We are also adding 2 additional uses, which surprisingly, since our last presentation, there has actually been some interest for, maybe we could show the next slide, Brady. Some interest for both of these types of uses. We've had to tell them that the zoning is not in place, but if it is, that they could talk to us at that time. We're not changing dimensionals. We're not changing the bulk. Clearly, if any user would be required to come back to the planning board for the necessary permits and approvals, but the longer the users stay dark, or the property stays dark, the more difficult it is to move it forward. And it is sort of a, I don't want to say difficult site, but it's you come in at one level and there is essentially 2 levels of where the furniture store was, at least. So it's difficult to get it to respond to the market, and that's all that we're trying to do here. So any questions? Be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Attorney Buckley. Kristen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted not really. I think it was very well summed up. It's just really expanding the uses, as I mentioned in the last meeting. This PD was literally, you can do retail, you can do a restaurant on the other site where EVs are, and you can do a hotel on the other. So it's super narrow. So we always anticipated that we need to see some change to really make sure that it was flexible enough to, when uses went out, that new uses could come in. And especially looking at the retail outlook right now, and kind of understanding that Burlington is pretty over retailed. So we're looking to diversify not just commercial and office, but also some retail areas. So I think we are seeing growth in medical office. We are seeing growth in health and wellness and fitness. So those are certainly uses that are consistent or compatible with what we're seeing coming into the market. BG uses we're very comfortable with. I will mention that I don't see that Long's Jewelers is really going anywhere in any near future. If you guys remember, they were thinking about hopping over to the mall, but you know, they put so much investment into the site where they are now. They seem very happy. I don't know if Attorney Buckley has any more comment on that, but I don't think we're looking at this rezoning to do something else with Long's Jewelers. It's really the other tenant spaces that have been dark for quite some time. Just
If
keep
anything,
it there.
we're hoping the rezoning would help Longs, because it's a difficult situation when you have an operation that is adjacent to properties that are in this industry called gone dark. And just while it's not part of the rezoning, I do think it's important that the board and town meeting members be aware of the fact that we've had discussions with Kristen and Melissa Tentaklis as to, you know, as that corner or that area evolves. I know that the town, through Kristen and Melissa, have obtained a grant to do some research and studies along that area, that the owners would be more than willing to participate in any redesign or repositioning of that corner. But this is, I don't want to say it's a bridge, but we're trying to make it productive property in the short term.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree. And the only other thing I just asked the board, so not anyway, what we have here, if there are questions, I certainly want to know so we can prepare for the next planning board meeting. We do expect that the warrant, and this will be true for all the articles, but we do expect the warrant language to need to be pretty set, potentially before our next meeting, if not right about our next meeting, for Maytown meeting to go to the printer. So I just want to make sure that if questions are good today, we do have a recommendation to continue the next meeting, but we also have the option, if you're comfortable, to also vote a recommendation. So it's totally up to you guys as questions come out. So just be thinking about the language itself between, you know, now and the next meeting. And anyway, that's about it. So thanks.
Okay, thank you both. Let's see how the board members feel. Vice Chairman Impemba, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think it's, I actually like the idea. I'd rather see these uses be incorporated over there rather than see it remain vacant. So I think it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Member Click Raymond.
Yes, I agree with Member Impemba.
Okay, very good. Member Covino.
Yes, I also agree, but I did have one question, maybe for staff.
Of course.
I'm trying to picture the plan in my mind. If in fact the vacant uses right now were turned into medical and sports or health sports club, would the parking that exists now support that? Just a gut reaction, Kristen, if you can. Do you know?
Yes, I think so. As you know, I mean, the tenant spaces aren't gigantic that are left. I mean, you're not looking at a giant gym or, you know, a big office clinic. You're looking
Okay.
at smaller uses, and especially with Long's Jewelers being the other use, Long's Jewelers really doesn't drive a ton of retail traffic. It's not at all like, you know, I mean, the quantity of purchase per visitor is high enough that they don't need to have high
Right,
traffic
right.
volume. So,
Right.
so especially with that mix of uses, even if you had medical office or fitness, you know, outpatient medical being a higher parking threshold, which I
right, that's
agree.
what I was
In
talking.
small sites,
Yeah.
outpatient medical can be an issue, but I feel that there is sufficient parking within this site. Good
Okay.
question.
All right,
Through the chair, through the chair, to Ernie, we would certainly have to take that into consideration as we talk to potential users. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be prepared to support this tonight if you
Okay.
want. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gaffney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the question I had was again, maybe to staff. So is there a history of why that was originally zoned that way?
I was not here when that came in, so I can't really tell you the history of why it was so narrow. I mean, I know overall in PD history, there's been different ebbs and flows of the specificity that has been needed to go to town meeting to get things approved. I mean, this I think is a severe case of, you really can only do these three things. But that was the plan at the time, and it's worked for, when was this PD? The 90s. So
Bill,
we're 30 plus years, and I think it's the next chapter that we need to think about writing. So I don't know, Bob, if you have any insight as to
through the chair,
that
I mean,
thought.
Bill, I did not do it, but if I recall, there was a lot of issues at the time that corridor was in transition. It went where the Barnes and Noble was the Howard Johnson's motel and restaurant. I think there might have been a restaurant. Yeah, it was and that was controversial when Barnes and Noble went in. As a matter of fact, I believe the planning board recommended against it, but it was put in. And there was concern at the same time that the mall was contemplating putting a second level on. So there was a lot of discussion as to what is the retail and how do we control it. So the idea, I don't know if you remember Jim Alciona, again, very talented lawyer. I think that drafted it very narrowly for the three specific uses. And at the time, and frankly, it was responsive to the marketplace for a number of years. And it is not an unattractive building in a corner with tough terrain there. It's just that, as we've all seen in the last year, things change and things are changing rapidly. And we're just trying to position it and make it a productive tax positive site. And one of the things that you'll find is that things are infectious. As things go dark, others go dark along with it. So we're just trying to do it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Bill. Member Espaillo.
No questions or comments, Madam Chair. I'd also be ready to support this tonight. I'm full support.
Thank you. Member Rappaport.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend favorably on the petitions to amend the South Avenue 1 Plan Development PD District zoning bylaws used table to permit the integration of the new uses applicable to parcel C only, submitted by Robert Bettinson, trustee of the Bettinson Portsmouth Realty Trust.
Madam Chair, could I jump in with a motion before that motion to close the public hearing on this?
Second that.
Can I
you.
pause all of you just to make sure Barbara might have comments, and if the public had any comments quickly just before
sorry.
Before you wrap it. I
Yep.
appreciate the enthusiasm. I just want to make sure that you
Thank
throw
you.
that out there.
I had no comments or questions. I'm also in favor, but before we move on to the motions, is there anyone in the listening public that wanted to make a comment or ask a question? Seeing no one, let's move on to Ernie's motion first, which I believe has been moved and seconded.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. And do we need a roll call for that?
Chairman, I'm going to do it anyway. Chairman LaRue.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba.
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond.
Yes.
Member Covino.
Yes.
Member Gaffney.
Yes.
Member Espejo.
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to Brenda's motion, which has also been moved and seconded.
Chairman LaRue.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba.
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond.
Yes.
Member Covino.
Yes.
Member Gaffney.
Yes.
Member Espejo.
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to, I see Christine Hung is on. She's not paying attention because she's doing what you're doing. She's on the municipal board in Medfield, is it?
Oh,
Yes, Medfield, the warrant committee. So we're We're
But
before
she,
the selectmen tonight,
she,
going over all
she
the
did
warrant articles. So
95% of the work on this, so
But
it's
you're
not,
multitasking, huh?
she did all the work. I just made the presentation. So
Thank
thank you
Thank you,
very much.
everyone.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item 7B, a public hearing to amend the Network Drive, at Northwest Park Plan Development District zoning bylaws to permit the integration of new residential uses and associated dimensional standards, parking requirements, and site amenities. Nordblum Development Company and its affiliate Network Drive Lot 10 owner LLC is the applicant.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, Robert Buckley, Raymond Bronstein. I have Christine Hung, if she's still paying attention, and Todd Fremont Smith from the Nordblum Company. Nordblum is on, I believe. I can't see the roster, but
Yeah, I'm here.
okay. Again, this was a situation over the last 20 years. We've had numerous attempts to redevelop this site or preserve the Kent Cottage. And if we could just, Brady, if we could just show again the location. I think everyone knows where the Kent Cottage is. It's across from the former Sun Microsystems campus. In the beginning, there were all sorts of ideas as to what this could be. And when Sun left, it was kind of an isolated parcel. It's surrounded by a conservation restriction, which limits the area that can be disturbed and developed. The building, as this shows, is falling in on itself. It's becoming very quickly a hazard. We've had a number of people who have looked at it over the years for various uses, but when they get the cost of rehabbing or stabilizing that building, they've all walked away. So I believe, and Todd could correct me, I believe a few years ago there was an entity that appeared before this board and went all the way through with site plan approval and special permits, and then went to bid the contract or bid the renovation and was astounded at the cost. So in order to preserve it, Nordblum is trying to develop up to 9 units of for sale housing. It will appeal, to a certain market in the town, and it will include 2 units in the Kent Cottage, or and through the massing of this and hopefully the revenue that it would generate, the Kent Cottage can be refurbished. The exterior, the stone will be preserved, and it will, as I said, house 2 units. This is a conceptual layout. Clearly, we'll have to go through permitting, particularly with conservation. But I think that the general consensus is this is probably the last and only a viable attempt to try to save the cottage, given the cost. So, so what we're proposing is to rezone this basic small parcel of land to, and again, this is a conceptual. I don't want someone to say this is, this is what we think we can do to make it work. Showing the massing and the layout, and it's clearly will be before the board to go through the final design and layout and units, and whether it's 6 units or 8 units or 9 units, we just don't know yet. But up to 9 would be the ideal. And this is just going to be limited to residential. We cannot put in the zoning for sale because the SJC in Massachusetts has said zoning is not a appropriate device to dictate the ownership of property, but we will send a letter to town meeting members as part of the presentation that the intent here is this is going to be for sale housing. And would welcome any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Buckley. Kristen, did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on before I turn this over to the board?
Yeah, I know we talked at the last meeting about 2 specific things over and above the presentation. It's one, kind of pedestrian connections in and around the areas that I think we should still be talking about to some degree, but most will probably land in the site plan special permit process with the planning board. And the second, which we do need to talk about, I think, with this is some sort of affordable component within this project. I have reached out to you, Chairman, as well as the applicant team to set up a discussion next week so we can begin preparing options for the board to consider at the next meeting. So I don't have, our recommendation is to continue till April 15th. Overall, I think the project is a good one. As you know, with some of other historic buildings in town, when you wait too long, there might be a point where we might not be able to save some of our buildings, which we've seen, unfortunately, in the more recent past with some of the Lexington Street House. So, I mean, I think we want to try to do something so we can save the very few historic pieces of property and structures that we have here in town. So I think it's a good proposal, but we just need to talk about a few things to be prepared for the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. I'm going to turn this over to the board. We're going to go in backwards order this time. Member Rappaport, would you like to ask any questions or make any comments?
No, I don't have anything at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member Espejo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question, Attorney Buckley, for the cottage itself, is that going to also be units, or is that going to be like a common area, or what was, I didn't see that quickly on the rendering.
Yeah, the intent, Mike, is to have 2 units in the cottage itself.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see that if you look at the plan here on the screen, you can see that the dotted line conceptually shows the 2 units.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Attorney Buckley.
Thank you. Member Gaffney.
No further questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Member Covino.
All set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Raymond.
Yes, I see in the staff report the recommendation was to continue this matter at the planning board meeting of April 15th, 2021, and I would make that motion pending the chair's opportunity to weigh in as she wishes.
Okay, thank you, Member Raymond. Member Mpemba. Vice Chairman.
Yep. So as I said before, I commend them for all the efforts that they've had over the years to try to save that building. I think it's so important to save as much of the history of the town as we can. I can't help but think, and I know this is probably not an option, but somehow to have even 1 unit in that building that, maybe could be, a use that maybe the Historic Commission could use, or somehow that the public had access somewhere to something within that. If it was made into 2 units, maybe one of the units could be something that could be made affordable for the, Historic Commission to, and then, have, a lot of historic memorabilia in there somehow, or something, as I said before, even a little coffee shop or something that allowed public to have some kind of access would be ideal. But again, I know that it's difficult, and I know, cost prohibitive probably in this instance, but I would like to maybe have them, through this process, look at the possibility of somehow allowing 1 unit in that historic building to have access to the public somehow. But
Yeah,
that's pretty much my.
Madam Chair, may I respond to that?
Please.
I know, Joe, you raised that at the last meeting. We have discussed that. There are some ideas that we can have. I noticed that, there are places, if you walk around the city of Boston or city of Lowell, where you can have artifacts or historical, I don't want to say paraphernalia, but I guess the word is artifacts, and placards, and kind of an educational type of presentation. And apropos of the earlier comment, that you could probably integrate that into the pedestrian connections. And again, when we lay it out, if there's an area that you could have sort of a mini visual display, then that's something we could talk about. It's just that, as I always say, you need the key to get this going and to start spending the money to make it work. So that's what we're looking to do. So
yeah, even something in lieu, and I appreciate that, but I appreciate the fact that you guys were looking at that and at least, making an attempt to do something with it. But I know, there's also talks about an affordable aspect here or some sort of payment in lieu of, or something to that degree. Maybe that would be the angle instead of the affordable piece of it, because this is a historic building. Maybe there's, some kind of a concession that could be made, on a historic side
No,
of things, versus
I
the
think,
affordable.
Joe, I think would be willing to consider anything reasonable. The site limitations in terms of parking are difficult. There is a pedestrian, you have, I don't know, what's it called, where Starbucks is and down the road, and the other way with the old Manion's Market. I mean, there are things that we'll look at, and if there's something that could be done from a historical presentation, maybe along the walkway or something. But those are things that as we start to fine tune this and come up with ideas, I think we'd be more than willing to sit down and talk about those issues.
Oh, great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I do not have any additional questions. I am very much in support of this. I'm glad to see the building saved, and I look forward to talking with you about the affordable component and about some historical components offline. I want to turn this over to the public, but especially I'm hoping that there may be some people from the Historical Commission attending tonight. So I'm going to ask first if there is anyone from the Historical Commission here tonight. Could you please identify yourself? Staff, do we see anyone? No. Okay. Well, then I'm going to ask if there's anyone else in the listening audience that would like to comment or ask a question on this matter.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
my name, I said before, my name is Monty Pearson. In addition to being a town meeting member from Precinct 3, I am the chair of the Land Use Committee.
Yes.
And I wanted to say that my committee is very skeptical of this proposal, as it is done, any preservation of the building is going to be irrelevant to the public, because it's going to be hidden as part of a residential development and will be really hardly accessible to the public in any way. So the preservation of this building this is not a way of preserving the building for the public, and so just preserving it for the sake of preserving it is not something my committee. The lack of interest by the Historical Commission seems to me to be backing up the idea that, is this a building that we need to study? And the group was also concerned about how this project may spill over into the woods and the wetlands. The place is tightly wrapped by those, and you look at the plan, and I don't know how the cars are going to get in and out, and the houses are all crammed together, and my committee is just very uncomfortable with changing the zoning and assuming that we're going to put residential in here and then work out the details. And my committee would really prefer that there be a lot more discussion of this before we actually came to town meeting. So that's where we're at for right now.
Okay, thank you, Monty. In quickly, I'm sure Attorney Buckley would like to respond, but I would like to say too, this is not really what we would consider a plan. This is just a concept drawing. And if this were to go to town meeting and be approved, then it would have to come back to the planning board and go through a whole site plan process when we would discuss things like parking and traffic flow and pedestrian access and all of those other things. And it would go to the Conservation Commission so that we would be sure that it is not encroaching upon the wetlands or the other natural areas that surround it. So I understand your concern, but I wanted to let you know that this is not a plan, and it will have to go through all of those other committees and through the planning board for a very rigorous process if it does get approved by town meeting.
Right. The problem that we have with this kind of situation is that this is the only time for the town meeting to have any say in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this time, for us to go ahead and grant the zoning is to, in our mind is, you know, giving our okay for the project and also, you know, pushing it far along the road. Just that, well, now that the zoning's been done, it's just a matter of figuring out the details. And so we would like to know have a better idea about doing that before we give up our zoning rights with this.
I understand. And thank you for weighing in and bringing your committee's concerns to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I respond?
Yes, you may.
I do think, Monty, that, and I tried to make this clear up front, it is a very difficult site in terms of site constraints, including the conservation restriction, which is extremely limiting as to what you can do in and around that. I would respectfully disagree a little bit with respect to the value of preserving architecture. I think the visual architecture in and of itself is a positive for the community. So while the public may not have access to it, there is a value to having visual New England scene, so to speak. And I think that as we go through the planning board and permitting process, I'm sure that between some of the members on the board and the long history I've had, I'm sure comments to that effect would be made. So design is important. And, you know, when you look at around the town center, you want to preserve the visual impact of some of those buildings for that simple reason that that has a positive reaction to those who live and reside in the community. I mean, it's not a moneymaker here. We're just trying to do it. There is some profit. I'm not going to mislead you, but that's the only way to get something done here to preserve it. The intent here is to do something hopefully that's beneficial to the developer as well as the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Buckley. One other thing I'd like to add to that one of the things that I'd like all the town meeting members to consider is I personally do think there is benefit in preserving the building, even if the public doesn't have access, although we're not sure that that's a done deal yet. But we feel very strongly about preserving old houses that people live in, and we don't get to go inside those people's individual homes, but we drive by them and we think they're beautiful buildings. And I don't think Burlington's done as good a job as many other surrounding communities in terms of preserving old homes, especially when you look at towns like Lexington that have done a wonderful job. But we're not allowed to go into any of those homes. We just drive by them, but they still, I think, benefit the community just because they have been preserved as homes. And in a way, although I didn't intend to be advocating for the project, the fact that this would be a residence is in keeping with what it was originally.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So,
Todd, I should have thought of that. Sorry.
You're hired.
Perhaps we should arrange a meeting.
So is there anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Monty.
Perhaps we could arrange a meeting with my committee and the proponents to
Absolutely.
talk about this,
Absolutely.
to see whether my folks are interested in having that kind of dialogue.
Absolutely. More than welcome.
Good.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak regarding this matter? Okay, seeing no one, I think we can entertain a motion to continue.
That was my motion, Madam Chair.
And I'll second Member Raymond's motion.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you soon. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item 7C, a public hearing to amend the zoning bylaw Article 5 and Article 7 as they pertain to floor area ratio, FAR, and parking structures in garages, submitted by the planning board. Kristen, do you want to speak on this first?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the first thing, I know we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, and started talking about FAR, and I initially had some comments about bringing it down from 1.0. I think this is a very good conversation, and I think we should have this conversation. At this point, you're looking at an article that includes both FAR in Article 5 and building to ground area percentage in Article 7 in terms of parking structures. What I would propose doing, they're both very valuable discussions, but what I would propose doing at this point is to bifurcate the two. Proposed FAR Article 5, and then from the building to ground area percentage Article 7. And what I would recommend, which you'll see a motion in your staff report, that I'd like to continue the portion of the article relating to Article 5 FAR to the planning board meeting of June 3rd. Again, not because we should talk about it. I just feel like there's a lot of layers that we just need to evaluate. And I know there was some little bit of discomfort at the last meeting. I think there's a lot of good questions that have come up. And there's, a lot out there. There's a lot of life science. There's a lot of competition, and really just understanding where we want to be as a community. And I think that conversation is well worth using a little bit more time talking through in terms of FAR. So I'm happy to talk about FAR, but if the board so chooses, you can also make the motion that's in your staff report to separate those two and continue that portion. And then I can certainly go on to talk about the building to ground area percentage. So Madam Chair, if you want to poll the board as to if they want to talk about FAR or just jump into the building to ground area percentage.
Thank you, Kristen. I definitely support separating these two. And I also support postponing the FAR discussion until after May town meeting. I think there's a lot more to discuss, and I personally am not comfortable moving forward that quickly. So I would quickly ask the board, I'm going to run through your names quickly and ask if you are in favor of separating the two and also postponing the FAR discussion till June. So I'm going to quickly run through the names. Joe, are you in favor or not of those two things?
I am in favor of both, separating them and waiting until on the FAR discussion.
Thank you. Member Raymond?
Same here.
Thank you. Member Covino?
Yes.
Member Gaffney?
Yes.
Member Espejo?
In favor of both.
Thank you. Member Rappaport?
I'm also in favor of both, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I will ask for a motion. It's on the bottom of page 4.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to bifurcate the proposed FAR Article 5 of the zoning bylaws and building to ground area percentage Article 7 of the zoning bylaws. Further, to continue the portion of the article relating to the Article 5 FAR to the planning board meeting of June 3rd, 2021.
Second.
Thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with that done, Kristen, maybe you can just quickly update the board and the general public about just the parking.
Sure. So
Yes.
the building to ground area percentage in all of history in Burlington, as consistent with the way the building code is interpreted, we have not included structured parking in the building to ground area percentage. And since we are silent to that in the zoning bylaw, that is fine. When we did the escadrille last September, we made a specific provision to include building to ground area in the BG district. By putting that in without explicitly kind of understanding how that impacted the other zoning district, it kind of inadvertently made all zoning districts need to include structured parking and building to ground, which we didn't discuss at the time. It was kind of just, we were so focused on that one parcel and making that work. And this happens when you look at one parcel and figuring some things for one parcel. And so what we are asking here is to clarify kind of what we meant there, but not necessarily bring in all the other zoning districts with structured parking and keep them regulated the way we have been regulated in the past. So with that, what we have proposed is to have the language specifically outline that a parking structure within the BG district is subject to the building to ground area percentage, but only that district. So that's what we're asking in this article. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. If we're happy, we have a recommendation to continue to the next meeting if we have questions. There's also, if the board is comfortable, recommendation outline within the staff report as well, if you so see fit.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Let's start off with Member Rappaport. Do you have any questions regarding this particular item?
No, I do not, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Espejo.
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Member Gaffney.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So wouldn't we want to include that for all districts? So I think the intent, if I recall, the Escadrille one was that you gained more green space by doing that. So why wouldn't we do that for all the districts?
We could have that discussion. It's a different discussion than we've had so far. It does make many areas that are already constructed non-conforming, because that was not the way that it was interpreted in the past.
Would they be grandfathered then?
Yeah, they would be
Okay.
grandfathered in. It would just be, they'd be non-conforming. And
Yeah.
also, so yeah, I mean, I think the concept worked for the Escadrille because in that district, because we looked at that piece. We didn't do the analysis on the rest of town and the other zoning districts. So certainly if that's a question, we can try to figure that out. It's just at the time in September, by making that change, we inadvertently affected a lot of other property that I don't think we had meant to, but also had not yet discussed. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing how that impacts everybody else thinking going forward, because if you look around and say, if that helps to provide green space where you get that benefit of the structured parking, but then the town gets the benefit of extra green space there. I think that's really intent of maybe even the master plan too, right?
well, the one thing that you have to consider, and we made this argument, I think, in the past, that if paved parking, if you can build paved parking corner to corner on your lot, then, or if you could build a structured parking, paved parking does not is not factored into the ground area per the maximum aggregate building to ground area percentage. So therefore, if you're going to include it within the construction, you're actually penalized then for building structured parking and building surface parking. You have an incentive to build surface parking. So while I see your point in terms of adding green space, you're kind of pushing people. And if I have to build less building to build structured parking, I'm building more, to maximize my building, I'm building more surface parking. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic. So while we do want to promote green space, if we're adding an incentive that doesn't necessarily get to our goal, we just need to look at that, because the market default is going to be, well, what can I do easiest and where am I going to not lose? And if building to ground structured parking, I'm going to lose building possibility, you might not get the outcome you actually anticipated. So, I mean, that's kind of the conversation that you need to be having when you're thinking about these.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Gaffney. Member Covino.
Yes. The argument that Kristen just made, or what she put forward is one that we had before when we talked about, and I'm talking way back, well, maybe not way back, when we talked about
Yes, certainly, Paul Raymond. It's
right,
way back.
right, yeah, okay. We didn't want to. We were trying to incentivize people to put in parking structures rather than surface parking, and if you look at it from objectively, I would hope, at least part of what's in the parking structure would have been surface parking anyways. So it's almost like you're converting at least some of that to building, which would have been on the surface anyways. So I think it would require quite a bit more discussion before we go wholesale changing the rest of it. I think the BG part of it makes sense because we did do, our staff did do some analysis on what other BG properties in town would be able to take advantage of the change to the bylaw. And I think that's one of the reasons we did make sure we included the parking structure in the building to ground ratio so that we could, so there'd be less that would be able to take advantage of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Cavino. Member Raymond.
Yes, Ernie is right on, of course, that when we were first considering whether there would be parking structures, the primary concern was that parking in structures were not inherently safe. That is, maybe at that time it just was that people were getting beat up and everything else. And, you know, they got out of their car, single woman walking along. Next thing you know, her purse is gone and she's on the ground. And so there was real concern about whether we should allow any structured parking at all. And that was a significant discussion. My concern is, as I was looking at all these, I said, oh my God, I said, we'd go from being Burlington to Somerville in the blink of an eye. And, you know, my concern is that keeping Burlington aligned with what our original vision was, that Burlington was a residential town that would have and allow and rezone certain portions to take advantage of our location. We put in sewer and water and said, let them build and we'll take advantage, and that's Third Avenue. So I want to hear a lot more about this, and I certainly would want one of my groups that I really rely on is land use for town meeting, because you know, they're involved in all of this, and I would want Monty and his group to really explore this before we go much further with it. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Member Raymond. Member Mpemba.
My only question would be, are there any instances here where the size of the building, if not allowed to have a parking structure, the size of the building would be limited by the amount of spaces you could fit on the site?
The building size is always limited by dimensional criteria, parking, and parking. I mean, what, and obviously physical attributes of the site. So if, depending on your use and how much parking you needed, then certainly the parking, you have to weigh all those things kind of back of the napkin to figure out how much you can actually build on the site, how much square footage. I mean, the building to ground area percentage is 33 1/3. Of the site can be the building to ground, just the first floor area, not the total area, not floor area ratio, but the building to ground. Right. So, I mean, that's one. But then if you need, you know, depending on how much area you have left to build parking, if you have enough area, you know, that's a controlling factor of how much you can build. Right. This article is not changing where you can build or if you can build structured parking. No. What it is saying is that because of what we had done last September, it includes other districts into the building to ground. Right.
So, I get it. But do you understand what I'm saying? If we, the way we had done it originally, when we did the Cafe Escadrille, we counted the area of the garage. on the building, on the amount of building in the site. So it didn't open the door to any larger buildings because the area of the garage was counted on the square footage of the building. If we remove that piece of it, are there any sites here that will be able to, that because of their size and the contour and the nature of the site, will be able to build more building area because they now were able to put more parking because they can put it in a structure?
If structured parking has to be included in that 33 1/3, then on kind of looking at it from the other direction, then they'd have to build less building.
I get that.
If
I
they-
understand
If they
that.
built structured parking.
I understand that, that side of the argument. I want to know the other side of the argument. Are there any sites that will be able to build more square footage in their building because they now don't have to spread the parking out on the lot, and now they're able to compact the parking, which would allow more parking and the ability to build more square footage?
If it's not included,
It's not included, right?
if it's not included, so you have the full 33 1/3, assuming you can park it. If you can build structured parking, I mean, the structured parking gives you the ability to park more than what you could on just surface parking. So
Right.
if the 33 1/3 building didn't have enough parking area
That's
to
right.
build all the parking on surface, they would need to build a parking garage.
That's exactly my point. So is there any
So-
situations like that here where that would allow them, it would enable them to build more square footage in the building merely because they're squeezing the parking and taking up some of the parking fields and now reducing it to a smaller field, which would allow them to put more parking in a smaller area and maybe allow them additional square footage in the building?
Potentially, yes, but I still think that it incentivizes it accidentally incentivizes surface parking over structure.
I get it, but the point is this. So if there's some way to cover that base,
Yep.
to say that you cannot get additional, looking at that site, you cannot get additional square footage merely because you're putting a parking structure in. It does, I don't want to disincentivize them putting a parking structure, but I want that space to then become open space. I don't want it to allow them to build more square footage because they put a parking structure in.
Yeah, I understand. I think that potentially, yes, but there's a lot of scenarios that you'd have to work out.
Well, that's what I mean. I think we need, that needs to be looked at, because I don't think we've really got a grip on that piece of it at this point. I know, we're just in talks right now, but that's one, that is probably my only concern. I do want to incentivize parking structures merely because I want to create open space, and that's my reason for wanting to do it, not to allow them to build more square footage on their building, right?
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Madam Chair, can I just ask for a point of clarification from staff?
Sure.
I understood that we were just clarifying this and not actually changing what exists now in the other districts. Am I correct, or I under the wrong impression?
The way we wrote the amendment when we did the Escadrille BG rezoning and BG modification to parking, it was not specific enough to BG only. So therefore, it could be read that it applies to all other districts where that at the time was not the intent. And so what we're asking for here is to clarify the BG district that we discussed at September town meeting.
Okay, so
We're not asking to change necessarily what has been the interpretation for time. It's just what we did in September was a broad language change that wasn't specific enough to kind of go toward the intention that you had with the BG escadrille proposal.
Right. So you're asking us if we want to leave what was in place at the time when we did the BG change, but clarify how parking structures are counted in the BG district.
Clarify
Am I
that
correct?
All
what
districts.
we're asking for is to clarify that that building to ground percentage continues to not be
Continues.
included
Okay.
into the maximum aggregate building to ground, with the exception of BG because of the warrant article we did back in
Okay.
September.
Okay. The operative word is continues as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm thinking is I agree with Joe's concern. I think we have two goals here that we're trying to balance, and I actually think we can achieve what we're trying to do, but we need to spend a little bit more time on the wording. So I am going to suggest that we continue this matter further so that we can just try to fine tune this a bit more. So that's what I am going to recommend. Is this? Okay, let me just see if there's anyone in the listening audience that wants to comment on this before we continue. Is there anyone? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm not a resident. This is Attorney Buckley, but I've been listening to the discussion,
Mhm.
and apropos of what Joe was saying, having sat in on these meetings when buildings are designed, the building to ground is not the controlling factor. The FAR is the controlling factor. When you design a building, you design it with the FAR in mind, and then you say, okay, we can either surface park the whole site to satisfy it, or we can deck it or use the structured parking in order to accomplish the FAR. But you don't start with the building to ground. You always look at the FAR and say, okay, this is what we think we can park with the FAR. So the FAR is the critical factor, not the building to ground. By creating nonconformity, you do impact the financeability of buildings. And I mean, I'm just listening to this discussion, but the more powerful, having sat with the architects, sat with the developers, the building to ground doesn't come into play until you determine the FAR. And I was trying to think of a recent example. When you approved 400 Summit, I think it was member Gaffney and maybe Joe and Pember and others focused on, you have a parking garage there, and it was an effort to maintain or maybe increase that parking garage and create the green belt around it and create more green space. At that point, the FAR had been established, and you were using the parking structure to, create that green space. So, for what it's worth, the FAR is the critical component on any design of a building. So.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Buckley. All right, I still think we need to noodle with this a little bit more. So I'm going to ask for a motion to continue this matter to the planning board meeting of April 15th, 2021.
So made.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, next I'm looking for a motion to take items 7D through 7L together for discussion purposes.
So moved.
And seconded.
Thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Member Vice Chairman Impemba,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Espejo, Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna ask Kristen to start us off on this.
Sure. I put them all together because that's how we did it at the last meeting, and it seemed to work pretty well instead of separately. And if I'll ask Brady or Liz to share the map of all of them, if you can throw that up. We also did do an abutters notification to from these sites to abutters within 300 feet to let them know of the rezonings. And again, so what we're really looking to do is look at areas that are either kind of uses that may be transitioning to different uses, buildings that are getting older and kind of looking for new investment, as well as looking at kind of clusters that form somewhat of a campus or are related to other life science or other kind of building clusters. So first I'll start with the first, which is purple, which is the area of the cinema and the extended stay hotel, which was the extended stay brought up earlier with South Ave proposal. For those, the cinema and the extended stay both are kind of, I don't know, I'm not sure how much longer those uses are going to be viable or vibrant. I know, and kind of just looking at positioning for us, a very important site in Burlington, across from the Burlington Mall, right at the interchange, a lot of highway access. And we believe that this is really a prominent site to look to reposition. Both of the uses that are on those two sites are allowed. Well, obviously, it's in a PD now, but extended stay is allowed in IH. So you're not making either one of those uses non-conforming within that zoning district. So again, this whole thing is to look at clustering campus, to promote more life science, advanced manufacturing type uses, look at corridors and buildings that are aging. So that's the first. The second is the 70, 76, 78, 80 Blanchard Road, which is in light green. The 78 building is a newer building. It's the Cambridge Trust building that you can see right on 128. And the building at 70 is a newer building, late 90s, I think. But again, just looking to reposition those buildings to look for to attract other uses, as you guys just permitted with Azure with the startup clean rooms. They have landed here, and just trying to kind of get the momentum and keep the momentum going. The last cluster is on the corner of South Bedford Street and Blanchard Road. Those are all older buildings. We do have some interesting tenants in there. But again, looking to look at areas that are kind of aging. What can we be looking at for more of a master plan? That particular area is all owned by the same owner. So I think a little bit easier to kind of envision the next chapter. One of the things that's very important also to note is we just finished or just finishing up right now, the state has a new program, the One Stop for Growth program, which includes all their grant programs, MassWorks, and many, many others, as well as is going to be part of the conduit that funnels through a lot of the federal money for infrastructure improvements and other type of improvements that we're seeing come down. The positioning new businesses, which is some of the COVID relief funding. And obviously MassWorks with infrastructure improvements. We recognize that Wheeler Blanchard Road needs a lot of work. It needs the roadway itself kind of wiggles all the way from Middlesex Turnpike down to South Bedford Street. There's wetland issues, and there is absolutely lack of sidewalk and bike paths. So the proposal that we just put together for just a letter of interest, which the state is not required, but asked for any communities that are going to be looking for grant funding to kind of first put together the letter of interest, which is due tomorrow, as to why these sites are important for the state to be considering funding for. So, I think the Blanchard-Wheeler corridor, especially with the connections to Northeastern, is an important corridor for us to be looking to. I mean, you think as Member Covino mentioned the other day when I was talking with him when they built Van de Graaff, it was kind of Blanchard-Wheeler is the Burlington Mall Road of this side of the highway, but it really isn't. So if we really want to be looking at, and not exactly going that far, but it's just, it's more of kind of this, old suburban roadway that has had historic businesses and older buildings, older sites. There's a lot of work that we've been doing for contamination remediation and other environmental upgrades, but there's a lot of sites that are overpaved without any stormwater, and how do we incentivize redevelopment along the corridor? And I think we've started pretty well. with 60 Blanchard, with Azor moving in. And I really think if we continue that momentum and continue taking actions to reposition our commercial space, we can, together with private funding and public funding with the Commonwealth, I think really look to upgrade this corridor and area kind of for whatever's next. So that's the proposal. It's just a flat rezoning to IH, no other specific text changes here. We have a motion to continue to the 15th, but we also have a motion if you're comfortable voting as well, and certainly happy to take any questions that you may. Oh, the one thing I did want to mention that has come up. So the IH district is the high-rise industrial district, which I know has caused a lot of confusion simply because it is called the high-rise industrial district, which when it was created back in the 70s, it was this, and it was 155 feet tall and kind of these Space Needle buildings with tons of buffer. And if you recall, back in January of 2020, we went back to town meeting to pretty much make the IH district similar to the IG district, which all of these properties are zoned IG, with the exception of the hotel. So IG allows for 80 feet, IH allows for 90 feet, just because we have the allowance for parking underneath, not to be not to penalize building for parking underneath. So essentially the dimensional requirements or the dimensional criteria is essentially very, very similar to where they are now. So we're not looking at all of a sudden by rezoning from IG to IH that you're going to have high-rise buildings all the way down Blanchard Road. That's not in fact the case. And the high-rise industrial district is a misnomer, and I think we should probably take suggestions as to what the new name should be. But be rest assured that the zoning districts that they're in now versus where they could go is not high-rise industrial. I think is just a point of confusion. So apologize for that, but that's the proposal that we have in front of you guys.
Thank you, Kristen. I agree. It's probably not well named, and we should probably just call it the industrial district. That might be simpler and cause less confusion. But anyway, let's go to the board and see what people are thinking. Joe and Pemba, would you like to start us off?
I would be in favor at this point of continuing. I don't think it's not prepared to take a vote on it today. So.
Okay. Do you have specific questions you want staff to look into?
No, I don't. But I feel like it needs to be vetted a little bit more than it is at this point in time. So.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I
Okay.
think the discussion was that I understand the reasoning for it, and I'm not, I'm on board with that. I understand the reasoning being that, we're trying to attract life science. The questions, I guess one of the questions I would have, would be if, we're talking about new construction, versus retrofitting. I get the retrofitting piece of it, but in the new construction piece of it, if they build a new building, would that allow more, because they're higher, because you need more height in each floor, with the life sciences, does that mean that there are, the fact that you're getting more height in each floor, does that mean there's the same amount of floors, only, the building will be a little bit bigger that way, or does it allow for, more floors, less floors? I guess that's the piece of it I really need to, understand a little bit better. So.
Right. Do I understand correctly? Let me just, because I understand your concern, Joe. Am I correct in understanding though, but with this change, the buildings will be able to be only 10 feet higher than they're currently able to be now?
Correct. The maximum goes from 80 to 90. However the floors shake out. If you need more floor to floor, maybe 3 floors is 4 floor, or 4 floors is 3 floors, but it's still, you're still at that.
I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Member Raymond, do you have any questions or comments?
Just to repeat my comments previously, which Joe is expressing in, his legally correct language and so forth about increasing density.
Okay, all right. Member Covino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A comment and then a question to staff. First comment was Kristen was talking. Kristen and I did have a conversation a while ago about Blanchard Road and Wheeler Road and whatever. I mean, it changes names 3 times, I think, along that stretch. And there was right. Well, you know, Paul. There was a gentleman by the name of Bruce Silverman was his name. He used to own 128 Tennis, Landmark, the Landmark buildings. I think he actually bought High Voltage when it was still existing. And he actually really did have a conceptual plan to put Second Mall Road, as Kristen was saying, on the south side of 128 in the general area of Blanchard Road. And he had it all drawn out and everything. He was an architect by vocation, although a developer in Burlington, and he'd actually drawn out a plan, and then he kind of just disappeared from the landscape after a while. But so there was some thought about doing that. That's just a little history. And my question, I guess, is to Kristen. In a few short sentences, the idea of changing the zoning from whatever these particular pieces of property are, most of them are IG, I think you said, to IH is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it basically to attract life sciences companies? And this would also give them the ability to build parking garages on their sites when they redid the building. Is that correct, Kristen?
Both are true. The IH allows life science by right. As you guys all know, there's about 6 other special permits that go along with life science that are usually included. So, life science by right is a good marketing tool, but in reality, it does come with other special permits. But yes, it allows us to push a little bit further on attracting life science with the IH rezoning. It does allow for structured parking, so it's a little bit more flexibility in the layout. The buildings that are there now are all way over the 0.15, 0.25 because they were built at a time when we didn't have the FAR restrictions before 1990. I think we started FAR. Let's see, what else? So yes, there is, and then the life science does allow for a little bit more FAR to the 0.5 if you in fact are building lab space within your building. So anyway, I think, as I've said many times before, Burlington's built out at kind of 0.42. These buildings, we haven't done the exact analysis of where they are, but as you can see on the sites themselves, the buildings are taking up way more than 0.25, and in some cases even more than that. So even more than 0.5 in some cases, especially in cluster C. So anyway, I don't see that rezoning these buildings is all of a sudden going to give anyone a ton more opportunity, but it does give you this one, life science by right, which is a good marketing tool. It also does allow for structured parking, which allows for, I think, a little bit more interesting site design. And, and then, the sales point of, I don't know, I guess I just feel like there's a lot of grant funding coming in for infrastructure. And if we can leverage any of that to especially upgrade our aging corridors such as Wheeler or Blanchard, I want to try to jump on it. So not to say that we couldn't do that without some of these rezonings. I just think that when we've taken action and demonstrated action, or say that we're working towards something, we usually get a little bit more attention to get something done. So
Thank you. In my other comment would have been is actually that not too long ago I might have had a bit of a concern about This being allowed to increase the density of the site. With denser office buildings, but I don't think anybody is going to be looking to build office buildings in the near future. I could be wrong, but that's just my take on it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member
These
Covino.
sites are also, these sites just for the most part, if you drive out there, these sites are pretty paved. I mean, they're where they can pave, they've paved them. They're not, in terms of saving green, you're not, if you build something new, I think we have a lot of opportunities to build back better sites than kind of where we are now if you drive the corridor. But thanks, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Member Gaffney, would you like to
Thank you,
weigh in?
Madam. Sure,
Mhm.
thank you. The cluster C, I think, is the one I'm focusing on just a little bit now, but even on cluster B with the Blanchard Road and with the ability, particularly cluster C, those buildings are 1 story, right? Ones with the pavement. Now you're going to go up to 3 or 4 stories, like you said, and structured parking to get, I would say, more population in there when we get back to the new normal. And now you're talking about, I'd say, traffic on Blanchard Road, which is really not a road that should handle any more traffic than it currently already does. It's this strict nature and the way it curves and goes downhill and it's not lit. But my other concern is on the South Bedford side, which I've always talked about, that where in normal times that gets backed up all the way past Wayside. And if we change that and those guys go to 3, 4 stories in each one of those parcels, now you're increasing that traffic. With the infrastructure money they're talking about, you get residents down on South Bedford Street. And then we talked about a while ago with Northeastern about changing up Cambridge Street and South Bedford intersection as part of the Northeastern improvement. Right now, that was, I forget how that was written into the condition, but was it a nice to have or try to do it, or is now the proposed infrastructure money, would that go into the Cambridge Street, South Bedford Street intersection? So now we can put in there to say it has to be done, or what's the thought on that?
So the Northeastern project what we negotiated as part of that is we were, in order to even submit Cambridge Street, South Bedford, Bedford Street in the intersection of Woburn, we needed to have at least a 25% plan. And what we negotiated with Northeastern is to get us there so we could submit it for funding. Right now, that does sit on within the MPO on the TIP program. We have included it in the letter of interest to have that be part of the Mass Works grant in line with these other efforts, because that intersection unlocks this area. If we don't do that, and if that intersection remains the same, we can't do this. Because that intersection, as you guys all know, when we've been permitting things, is the bottleneck in this area. So if that geometry isn't able to be opened up, it's hard for us to, whether we rezone or not, it's hard
Right.
for us to open up the capacity that could exist. However, we still, as mentioned, you're limited to that FAR. We're trying to attract life science businesses that do have less of a trip generation than others. So, we're hoping to balance the uses with what the corridor can handle, but at the same time upgrade the corridor, and certainly look to upgrade and work with Woburn, that intersection, because that intersection is certainly a bottleneck in this part of town.
So are we talking about waiting till that's approved before we rezone, or are we doing a chicken and the egg? We rezoning and then hopefully we get to improve that.
I think what we need to do is continue the momentum of trying to get attention into the corridor and area. I think part of a rezoning effort can help keep that momentum if there's other ways to do that. I mean, these buildings sit right now, they've been in IG. We don't have any interest in them. The 76, 78, 80 buildings have had a really hard time leasing up. That was more built as a traditional office building. I think they'd probably rethink that right now. But anyway, it's an aging corridor. We want to try to enliven it with use interest, property owner interest for new investment, as well as state and interest in terms of working with us to really achieve some of these long-standing goals of pedestrian connectivity, bike path, as well as roadway improvements. As I said, Blanchard Wheeler is like a squiggly line between Middlesex and South Bedford, which is not super conducive. And there might not be that much to do with it, but with the negotiations that we've had with the trustees to make sure that we can, if needed, build sidewalks on that side of the road within their property themselves without having it be in the conservation restriction, and really try to add to that corridor. But as you guys have all, the MO in Burlington is, how do we kind of leverage all these sources between public, private, state to do as much in our commercial sectors, and not have to spend a lot of local money on sidewalks and roadway improvements and others in that commercial, on the commercial corridors. Whereas I don't know, as long as I've been here, that's kind of the MO. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Bill. Member Espejo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. I'm fully in favor of this. I think it's great. I think it's a nice proactive way to try and generate some life science opportunities and businesses and tenants. And I think Kristen hit it right on the nail right on the head. The word that it keeps bouncing around my head is we're continuing the momentum that the town is kind of, the transformation of a town into hopefully what will become a life science powerhouse. I love taking some of these buildings or offices like the ones on Blanchard, Kristen just mentioned, that are just sitting there, and rezoning them and making them more amenable to life sciences. So I love all of this. I'm not concerned about the density or traffic because, as we've seen all along, the life science
I don't live there.
industries and buildings, they're less employees, less dense. So
Believe it.
my only dislike is that I hope we don't lose the movie theater because I love going to the movies. But other than that, I'm fully in favor of all this. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
Okay, thank you, Member Espejo. Member Rappaport.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favor of the change. I just feel like it might be a little premature. I think at one point we did have, we looked at some type of a grid when we rezoned another section of town where, we saw what the differences were of, what exists now versus what the changes could be. That might be a helpful exercise for the board. Kristen had mentioned that there is a funding letter deadline tomorrow. What does the next deadline look like, or what's the next series of funding capabilities look like for us? So if we don't submit that letter tomorrow, or actually let me back up. If we don't approve this tonight, can you not submit this tomorrow? Submit the letter tomorrow?
No, we're submitting, the letter is just a letter of interest, like kind of what are you thinking about that you might be submitting? The deadline for most of the grant applications is in June. So,
Okay.
We can certainly, what we'd like to really do is kind of show, and, we've shown in this area as well as Burlington Mall Road and the active grant funding we've received there, and as well as the town center and work that Melissa has been doing in the town center. So, it's really, the letter of intent is showing what are we doing to actively try to achieve a vision, and what is that vision. But the next round, when things are going to be due, it comes in June. And I think we can still, still certainly go after some of that funding. It's always, easier if we can, just benchmark those, that momentum, and that especially the town's consensus on certain visions. So I'm certainly happy to talk through this more, and if there's any suggestions or information that you guys would like to see to understand it more. I recognize fully that Blanchard, Muller, Wheeler, and those roadways over there are not built to sustain a lot more increase in traffic. I don't think we're looking at an increase of traffic by repositioning these buildings. But with that, I think that even if things are status quo, we need to be looking at roadway, pedestrian, and other improvements, so we're not burdening any of the neighborhoods that are over there, and that we're focusing attention on, on and off the highway and staying within the commercial roadways. Because the roadways are the way they are now, I think you're seeing people inadvertently using Muller and all those other roadways to kind of wiggle their way over to Lexington or Woburn or wherever. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on. But I don't see that these rezonings themselves are going to create, they may create redevelopment. These buildings are all full right now, for the most part. And we're just looking to kind of diversify the types of uses that are there, but at the same time, with these actions, leverage the ability to better get and attract funding, and leverage public-private funding as much as we can to get these roadways upgraded so people are using the paths. I mean, as you guys know, we've talked a lot about, when Oracle was built, why are people going in certain directions? People are not going to that Cambridge, South Bedford, Bedford Street intersection because it doesn't work. And therefore you're seeing traffic going into some of these residential neighborhoods. So I think, as was said, I don't remember who, but the chicken and the egg, I think there is a chicken and an egg. I think it's, you take certain actions to then get other actions. And with any of this, with every single site development, you still have full control over site plan, special permit, and traffic and everything else. So I don't think you're necessarily unlocking the door. You're just allowing for some more possibilities for more diverse conversations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Also, I don't know that I would necessarily want to vote, I'd like to vote separately for each cluster, I think. Once we take a little bit of a deeper dive, rather than just saying collectively, we're going to vote for cluster A, B, and C. I think maybe getting some feedback from neighbors who I think have chimed in already in the background. I think we might want to hear some, some concerns. But again, I think maybe taking a little bit of a deeper dive. Again, I'm very, very much so in support of life sciences and bringing them into the community. I think it will be great, to redevelop these areas as best as we can. But I think sometimes I'd like to take a little bit more of a cautious step than a leap in rezoning these areas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, I too want to hear from the neighbors. I want to make a couple of quick comments first and make sure I'm understanding something. My biggest concern here is traffic. I don't have a lot of concerns about the differences in building capacity, because it sounds to me like the main difference is just 10 feet in height and the ability to put parking under, which is why we have the 10 feet in height, and that it becomes more possible, more likely for life sciences to go into these buildings. So I don't have any concerns about those two things. My concern is traffic. My understanding, and Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these sites could redevelop now, and they may be one-story buildings now, but they could knock them down and build up 80-foot height buildings now. And what may go in there could be possibly office. I mean, it may not be attractive right now to build office, but at some point it could be an office building that's 80 feet in height and would cause more traffic than a 90-foot height life science building. Now we can sort of gamble that that's not going to happen because no one's really interested in building office space right now. And so therefore you could say, well, by refusing to do this, we could be keeping the traffic down because nobody will redevelop those buildings. It's a gamble though, because they still could, and because the market could change and that might become more attractive in the future. So like I said, my biggest concern is traffic. I'm not ready to move forward on this. I like Brenda's idea of separating these out and voting on them separately because they are very different areas. But right now, I think it would be important for us to hear from anyone else in the audience that is present that wants to speak on this matter. So I'm going to ask if there is anyone in the listening audience that wants to ask a question or make a comment. Please identify yourself. Monty, please go ahead. I think you're on mute, Monty.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you might imagine, my group was involved in this discussions already. So we have already had a meeting and had a discussion about this. And we, especially me, like the vision of looking at this side of town and building it up. And that these sites that we've identified look to me like good sites to begin thinking about what might be happening with that. But what I think that we want to do is that this targeting ought to start out with how the town might build up its infrastructure for this area to make it more inviting, and have the infrastructure come first before the zoning changes. And before any new building is going on there because of the traffic situation. I mean, we got really jobbed by Northeastern University. They increased the traffic without doing anything except helping us with a grant proposal. But I think that it's possible for the planning board to lead the way to, really making some infrastructure changes that would make a difference here. We could start out with putting a traffic light in for Blanchard and South Bedford Street. Or we could just wait until there are several accidents there and we feel like we have to. But I think that town residents would like to see the infrastructure first and then the development afterwards, rather than the other way around, because sometimes it doesn't work the other way around, and we have development and no infrastructure. So we have a lot of good infrastructure around here and we can see what needs to be done. So I think it would be better for us to be moving ahead strongly on that. And we could say to the state, once we do infrastructure, that's going to lure people in. Infrastructure is a real concrete way of luring people in addition to zoning. But I don't think town meeting is going to be excited about giving up its zoning powers and granting this zoning yet until there's more infrastructure plans and some commitment from somebody in order to make that happen. So that's my committee report.
Thank you, Monty. Are there any other members of the audience, neighbors that would like to weigh in? I thought I had heard someone making a comment previously. Okay,
I think, Barbara, it's from a call-in user, and I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm a little concerned that we're not hearing from the neighbors, and I know that there are neighbors in that area that have concerns, especially about the traffic. So I'm glad. I actually don't think we should vote on this tonight. I want to make sure that the neighbors have ample opportunity to participate. I'm not sure what the rest of the board thinks. I would like to continue this to our next meeting. I'd like to do what Brenda said and vote on them separately at that time, and also just give the whole neighborhood more time to weigh in on this, because the traffic concerns are very real there. So I'm going to give it.
Madam Chair?
I'm seeing lots of hands, so hold on 1 minute. I saw Mike Espeo's hand up first.
No, Bernie can go first. I was just going to make a motion to continue, but.
Okay.
Sorry, Mike. Didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
Can I just? If there was somebody that's on the phone that wishes to speak, unfortunately we had to mute you, but you can unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Thank you, Jen. Let's wait for a phone participant and make sure that person has time to unmute and weigh in with us. Can we tell, Jen, if that person is still on the line? Okay, while we're waiting for that person, I also saw Monty's hand up again. Monty, did you have a question? Okay, Ernie, did you have a question or were you going to make a motion?
No, I actually had a comment. I know because of the way we have to advertise for zoning changes, it's only 300 feet from the property line to property line, I believe. But there was another project on Blanchard Road that elicited quite a bit of comment, and that was the self-storage place. And I was wondering if maybe we could reach out, even though we don't have to make sure that those people are aware of us talking about things going on Blanchard Road, so that we can get as many people as possible involved in the conversation.
I think that's an excellent idea, Ernie. Thank you.
I do
So
want
let's
to, I do want to call out Brady and Liz and Jen. I know they put together the mailing and it was no small mailing. I don't know if Brady or Jen or Liz, if you can say how many things we mailed out.
110.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So we have tried to reach out to quite a few people, and I'm not sure why we don't have more more interest on the phone. If we are continuing, we can, you know, try again to mail out for our next meeting, but
Okay.
you know, just letting you know.
I did see Monty's hand up again. Monty, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I am unmuted now. I was just wondering, in terms of the way the planning board works, is it, do you have long-run initiatives that you follow through on over the course of a year or so and come back to them at times? Because this strikes me as a long-term initiative that the planning board could, I don't know, be checking up on and thinking about new things or something like that. There's some way for the planning board to vote for this to be an initiative to create this over a period of time.
I don't think we need to vote to do that. I think we could just sort of resolve to do that. If it's something we're not ready to move forward on right away, we could just decide that we want to hold off on some of these, maybe vote on some of them and hold off on some and consider it a more long-term initiative.
Because I think that even if we don't move ahead on some of the zoning things, that a lot of the other things that have been brought up by the other members ought to be thought about, and, you know, what should we do next? Maybe that's just for the staff to keep it alive and not let it go away.
Yes, and I think there are some of these that are a little less problematic. Along Blanchard Road is the one that I think is causing the most concern. Thank you for your input. I'm going to give one more chance to see if there's anybody on the phone that wants to weigh in. And seeing no one, I think we should continue this to the next meeting.
If anyone does have questions that may or may not have been able to express themselves, you can always send us an email at planning@burlington.org or call us at 781-2701-645 if you have any comments, and certainly, again, obviously come to our next meeting on April 15th. But and just to Monty's point, that yes, I mean the master plan got at certainly certain initiatives. This is definitely a corridor that is aging, that we've been looking at the next chapter of what it should be. But it's, you know, it's a little bit of a timing and opportunity at the same time, where, you know, we could have a list of 10 things that we should do, and then, you know, certain opportunities come up where timing is key. So, you know, I think we try to put in a list and work linear, but, you know, as we all know, it kind of, you reprioritize as different opportunities come up. So I certainly, for all of these things and planning initiatives, we hope that we can continue all of these discussions. And we just try to bring things forward to you that we think are, you know, at the right time for these conversations. It's ripe to do so. And certainly if there's more questions or we need some more discussion, just like FAR, we're happy to do that. And if there's something, just as Brenda said, do we need to do this tonight or do we miss an opportunity? I mean, we'll certainly let you know.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Can we vote to continue all of these at once? Okay, great. That's what I'm looking for.
Motion to continue all of these at once to the planning board meeting of April 15th, 2001.
Second.
Thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond, Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, the next item on our agenda is item 7A, a public hearing application for approval of a special permit pursuant to 4.2.6.10 restaurants of the zoning bylaw 10 Wall Street, Waterville Business Development LLC, doing business as X Golf Burlington, is the applicant. So,
Madam Chair,
yes,
if I may,
yes.
I just would like to ask Member Raymond so that he can unmute himself to press *6 on his phone so that he can participate in the next matter.
Oh,
And
okay.
then- Is that correct, Jen? It's *6? I think you're muted. But I think,
Yes,
Hello?
*6. There he
Oh.
is.
there you are, Paul. Excellent. Thank you. All right, carry on. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Oh, thank you, Paul. We want to be able to hear you. So, welcome back.
May I make one comment, please, before we go
Sure.
on?
Okay.
It was my understanding that where South Bedford comes into Cambridge Street, that there's some conservation land there on the other side, and that was what was inhibiting that from going forward. I may be wrong, but I thought that was part of the conservation land that went with the rezoning and so forth of Mary Cummings. But that was all. Thank you.
I don't know. Thank you, Paul. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question.
The answer, there is some conservation and protected Article 97 land, but we did work through that within the design for the 25% design, and there we can still improve greatly the geometry of that intersection while protecting the Article 97 piece.
Okay,
So,
thank you. So we have opened a public hearing for X Golf Burlington. May I ask who is here representing X Golf?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and board members. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn with Reamer Bronstein representing the applicant. Pleased to be before you tonight. Also with me tonight is John Langevin, who is a principal with Waterville Business Development, the applicant entity that's filed the application. So very pleased to be before you tonight in connection with this application. It is for a special permit for a restaurant use for a new and exciting concept that I know we're pleased to be able to hopefully bring here to Burlington. Property in question that we're talking about is at 10 Wall Street, building that's owned by the Gutierrez Company, and the portion of the space that we're talking about is the space that was previously occupied by Chuck E. Cheese for many years. And X Golf is an exciting new concept that is looking to occupy a portion of that space that was formerly occupied by X Golf. So they are a restaurant and indoor golf simulator facility. They would offer food and beverage restaurant operation along with indoor golf services, golf lessons, and course sessions that are run via a state-of-the-art video simulation system. So it basically allows patrons the opportunity to play golf courses that are well known throughout the country, Pebble Beach and the courses over in Scotland, through a real neat state-of-the-art system that provides the ultimate technological enhancement. And offering a casual dining experience as well. So the floor plan layout that we submitted, Madam Chair, does show the breakout of the space, but I don't know if Brady has an opportunity perhaps to bring that up. But basically, the floor plan shows golf simulators that would be located around the perimeter of the space. There would be 7 of them in total, with seating located at each one of those. And then in the central core of the space, there would be the kind of the kitchen, the food. Yeah, there you go. So those 7 red squares, if you would, are where the golf simulator areas would be. And there would be seating located at each one of those for patrons to be able to sit with, family or friends and be able to enjoy that experience. And then in the middle portion of the floor plan is where there would be the food prep, food service area, and there would be kind of a countertop, food area, that you'd be able to sit at and order and have a drink as well. And then when you enter in from the front to the left, there would be some high top dining tables and a more casual seating area there as well. So there'd be a PGA tour pro that would be on staff at all times and be able to offer lessons to folks that are looking to, have that. So the restaurant component does trigger the need for a special permit, which is obviously what we applied for. And we're located in the BG zoning district, so restaurant use is obviously allowed by special permit. So there's no exterior expansion of space that's being proposed, or any exterior alterations whatsoever. The only very minor change is that we're looking to incorporate a new entrance door, for which we did submit a insignificant change application to the board. So what I thought might be helpful, I know you've had kind of a long evening here tonight, so I didn't want to, get repetitive or anything, but if I could introduce John Langevin at this time. John's a local area resident, actually lives in Lexington, and I know he's very excited about being able to bring the concept here. This is only going to be the second one in Massachusetts. There's one that's in Wayland right now, but this would be the second location in Massachusetts for this exciting franchise. So Brady, if it's possible for you to share your screen with John, I know that he had a couple of slides that he wanted to just quickly walk through with the board. Just give the board a feel for kind of what the facility's like. So
sure, be happy to do that, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. But most importantly, wanted to thank you all for giving us an opportunity to participate in this hearing. Let me try to share my screen. It's always an adventure when you do this for the first time. I don't know if you're seeing anything.
we are, yes.
Okay. And Mark mentioned that I'm local. I live in Lexington, but I've been enjoying this meeting so far. My first job when I first came to Massachusetts in the mid-1980s was at Maycom, and I worked for 10 years along South Avenue. And someone mentioned earlier that, that area where Barnes and Noble used to be a Howard Johnson's, and there used to be a restaurant and pub there. And I used to spend a lot of time at Howard Johnson's. There probably aren't a lot of people who remember that, but I'm having flashbacks of all kinds of craziness that used to go on there, but very fond memories for me. Anyway, as Mark had said, X Golf, it is an indoor golf facility. A PGA professional will be resident, and he's able to give lessons if that's what you're interested. But I think a bigger part of this is going to be more about giving golfers an opportunity to play some of these courses around the world in an indoor environment. So players can play a lot of different golf courses, and while they're doing that, they're able to have food and/or beverages delivered to them while they're at their simulator. We'll have a wait staff, and that'll kind of enhance the overall experience. Without getting into the details, X Golf uses very advanced technology that's been developed for a number of years. It was developed actually in Asia, where there are limited golf courses, so having an ability to practice golf in an indoor setting is very popular and prevalent over there. The X Golf franchises started in Australia, and there are about a dozen stores in Australia. They made the move into North America about 3 years ago. There are currently about 30-something franchises across the country. We expect that to be over 50 by the end of this year, and I think it's going to grow plenty more beyond that. Again, without getting into the details of the technology, it's pretty cool stuff where it's all automated. So, when you push the button, the ball automatically gets loaded onto the tee, and you're able to adjust the height of the tee and so forth. And it's a lot of fun. As I mentioned, the franchise is starting to get recognized as one of the top new emerging franchises in the country, both within its category as well as just in a broader sense. So expect that this thing is going to grow a lot more, and there are going to be a lot more than two stores in Massachusetts before very long. This is kind of a busy picture, but it gives a sense of what goes on inside an X-Golf facility. You know, you can see along this is actually two different photographs next to each other, but you know, along the perimeter you can see these golf simulators, and you're looking at pretty nice shots of the different golf courses as Mark had mentioned. And it's kind of like a virtual reality experience, because you hit your ball, and there are sensors that, you know, detect the club head speed and the rotation on the ball and all those technical things, and that superimposes the ball then onto this golf course. And then when your ball lands and settles, the image changes so that you're hitting again from that same spot, and ultimately getting through 18 holes of golf in a much shorter amount of time. And of course, it never rains. But, you know, it looks like a lot of, you know, enjoyment as depicted in these pictures, where it's a really fun experience. And in the lower left picture, you can see, in addition to the bar, there's a counter where food is served, and beverages can be served as well. These are a couple of layouts. The space that I have in Wall Street is a little bit different, but the same concept. Each of the stores have between 5 and 8 of these simulators. And I don't know if you can see my pointer, but, you know, in this case here, there's, you know, a counter where you can order food and drinks, and there's a food preparation area behind. It's not really a full kitchen. It's all food that's, you know, made, comes in frozen, and it can be heated and served in a convection oven, similar to what they have in the Dunkin' Donuts type stores for heating food without a lot of, you know, extra ventilation and stuff necessary. But this gives you a sense of how the different stores are laid out, and the layout of mine that you saw is a little bit different, but the same concept. And here are just a couple more pictures of both the inside and outside of some of the other stores in the country right now that give you a sense of the way these are looking, both internally and externally, and what you can expect. Any questions that I can answer about what X-Golf is, or what I'm looking to do here?
I'm sure that people will have questions. Thank you for the introduction. Before I turn it over to the board members, Kristen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Not really. I mean, in this, it's a, you know, restaurant concept with entertainment. It's, you know, somewhat similar to King's, a little bit different. But I think it's, I don't know, I think it's the direction that, you know, as we diversify restaurant, we will diversify entertainment. We've talked a lot about how entertainment isn't codified very well in our zoning bylaw. And I think things like this of, you know, places where people can gather, hopefully we can gather in places pretty soon, you know, in a healthy way, I think is, you know, are good options. Our entertainment category in general was like dance halls and other things that, but anyway, this is, this isn't part of that, but it's just, I guess my point is that I think it's a good use, in terms of, you know, just making it work. I think, you know, I want to understand a little bit more about the restaurant aspect, just because that's the special permit we have here. But overall, I'm supportive. We don't have a decision tonight because we wanted to make sure there was enough time for abutters and others to weigh in. In terms of cooking, you know, Chuck E. Cheese was a cooking facility. We have asked the applicant to look at what odor control and other things. As mentioned, they don't, you know, do a whole bunch of frying and other things, so there's not a lot of odor control measures that need to be put in. But I'm sure the Chuck E. Cheese equipment is aging, if not already out of use. So just to take a look at just kind of the infrastructure of a use that had been there for a long time, to make sure they can do whatever they can, whatever's on the roof, to make sure it's not negatively impacting the neighborhood, or if they can even improve what was there before. Because I mean, this is somewhat next to the Crossroads Plaza. You do have that neighborhood kind of above. It's further away from Crossroads, but the neighborhood kind of above behind. So, but other than that, no, we're good, and we'll have a decision drafted at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, Member Rappaport, would you like to start us off?
I think this is a really cool concept. I think this is probably the only green where I won't lose the ball. So I'm excited for it to come to Burlington. I don't really have too many questions at this point, but I'm excited to vote on this next week. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member Españo.
I'll agree with Member Rapport. This is like a really cool concept and a cool place that I'd hang out with because I, again, wouldn't lose any balls. My only question is, I see there's like 25 locations across the country. What are the hours of operation for a place like this?
So the hours of operation are roughly going to be, let's say, 10 a.m. until about 10 p.m. I think it's going to vary between the summertime and the wintertime. The winter is obviously a lot more busy because you don't have the option of playing outdoor golf. In the summer, it gets a little bit slower, so the hours may be shortened. But right now, the plan is 7 days a week, and within that 10 a.m. to 9 or 10 p.m. window.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. No further questions.
Okay, thank you, Member Españo. Member Gaffney.
No questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Member Covino.
All set now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Member Raymond.
Looks like fun. No questions. I'm waiting for virtual skiing.
Member Impemba.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like a lot of fun. That question I had was, I know you had, I wasn't sure, this location will have regular meals, or, because you said some of the locations have like almost like a heating up kind of, like a Dunkin' Donuts kind of thing. This location will actually have meals and alcoholic beverages?
I could speak to it. So it's more of a casual menu, Joe, that they're going to be providing here.
Yep.
I think, things like, sliders, appetizers, quesadillas, charcuterie board, things of that nature that, kind of focused on that gamut of it. But we will be applying, we have and will be before the Board of Selectmen at some point for a liquor license as well.
Right, okay. And then you had said the hours vary from the summer to the winter, but I would assume even in the summer, the evening hours would be they would have evening hours during the summer, because obviously you can't golf at night. But
Right.
I'm starting to get a little suspect of this location, because I don't know, but when my kids were little and then Chuck E. Cheese was there, right? And then when my kids grew, Chuck E. Cheese went out of business, and now my kids are an age that they're gonna want to be in this golf place all the time. So I don't know if my kids have something to do with location, or that location has something to do with my kids, or what. But I love it. I think this is going to be a great addition to the town. So I wish you a lot of luck with it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I guess the location is adapting to the changes and growing with the crowd. So
yeah. Great.
Okay.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I just have a couple of quick questions. I think it sounds like a very interesting concept, something fun and different. Are you looking for a full liquor license or just beer and wine?
We are applying for a full license, Barbara. So I think that it's really not going to be a heavy alcohol use, but someone that might be in there looking for a what's the drink? A John Daly? Is that what it is? John?
An Arnold Palmer has kind of evolved into a John Daly, but there are a lot of golfers that have a favorite drink. Might be a Dark and Stormy, might be a John Daly, and a lot of times golfers just like to have that along with them as they're playing to enhance the experience. So those are the types of things that we'll be serving.
In terms of operations, are you going to operate similarly to King's in that after a certain time of night you throw all the under 21s out, or are you going to keep that open for younger kids and just card everybody?
So unfortunately, I'm not familiar with King's. I've never
King's
actually been.
keeps all the kids out at a certain point in time, 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Everybody who's under 21 has to leave.
Okay, I wasn't planning on doing that. We are going to ensure that all of our servers are tip certified, obviously, and we're going to make sure we follow all the rules and regulations, both from ABCC and from the town. And if that kind of thing becomes necessary or appropriate, we're certainly going to do whatever makes the most sense. But as of now, we weren't planning on having any kind of action like that,
Okay, I'm not asking for it. I was actually just curious because I know
Yeah.
that's how King's works, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the King's concept, only with golf. So
Yep, exactly. Yep.
thank you. So I'd like to see if there are any members of the audience, abutters or residents or anyone else in the listening audience that would like to ask a question or make a comment on this matter. Anyone? Okay, seeing no one.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to, excuse me, did I interrupt you?
Please go
I'm sorry.
ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this matter to the planning board meeting of April 15th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impella,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thank you and welcome to Burlington. Can you let us know when you intend to open?
Absolutely. The goal is to open around September, which kind of, brings us right into that winter season. So that's the goal. And if we can get things going through the town quickly, we're on track to do that.
Great. Well, we'll see you back in a couple of weeks, but it sounds like a very interesting concept.
Thank you very much. It's been fun so far, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think you'll all get a kick out of it too. And
Okay.
it'll be fun for all of us.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Moving on our agenda, the next item on our agenda is item 7O. A public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 4.2.6.2. Convenience stores, drugstores, retail stores for sale of beauty and health aids, smoking supplies, periodicals, none with the sale of food intended for consumption on the premises of the zoning bylaw 207 Cambridge Street India Food Market LLC is the applicant. And I understand from Brady that the applicant has decided to withdraw, correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. I would like, before we move on, we're gonna and accept the motion to withdraw. I did want to just quickly, for the members of the board and people who are listening, as you all know, there were a number of problems on this site, some of which were related to this particular business and some of which were just related to other businesses that are on the site. And I thought we'd take a minute and ask Kristen to update the board on how those issues will be dealt with, because we are not leaving the neighborhood and abandoning these problems. Kristen?
Sure. I'll high level it, but I'm gonna ask Liz to jump in as well, because Liz has been doing a fantastic job going back and forth with many different emails with the property owner, trying to coordinate all of this. And I will commend Brady to going back and forth with the special permit applicant of O'Reilly Auto Parts as well. So it's really been a team effort trying to weave everything together for this single site. So so at this point, what we do know, so it was a surprise that the property owner or the supermarket wanted to withdraw the expansion. I would like to know a little bit more about that. That just came in at the end of the week last week. We hope to reach out to the applicant to try to, I think we were all in favor of something like that. It's just there's a lot of other moving parts. With that, as you are all aware, the drainage aspect, the property owner has assured us that there'll be a plan coming in, as well as with the O'Reilly Auto Parts special permit, needs to come in with a site plan as well. So as much as I think we wanted to tie a lot of these issues with the supermarket, I feel that we very much will have the opportunity in a few weeks to come with the submission of that site plan. I mean, bottom line, there's a lot of things out there that were not permitted. So we hope through a permitting process and the site plan process and special permit processes to get everything in compliance and properly done. The supermarket owner actually did say in his withdrawal that even though he is withdrawing, he will continue to work with the building department and our department to make sure that the items in the back are properly screened. That is something that will need to be shown on the site plan that comes in with the property owner. So I guess, we'll entertain the withdrawal, but certainly we are on top of working with the property owner to make sure they do submit in a timely fashion. And if they don't, we have some letters we can write. We hope it doesn't get to that point, but want to try to move this forward in a coordinated fashion. But Liz or Brady, do you have any other comments? You guys have done a great job working with everyone involved.
Not really. The last email I have from the property manager is he did acknowledge that a site plan would not be ready for April 1st, and that he is definitely working on it. But definitely we're in contact. I have sent him emails, a very long, very extensive email, about the site plan process. I gave him the town center rules and regs, all of that stuff, and the town, design guidelines, kind of just. I gave him everything, and we'll be there to help him along and make sure that we're all working together to make sure we get a site that is what the town center deserves, really. So that's kind of where we are on that.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Brady, did you need to add anything?
I would just second everything that Kristen and Liz have said, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then I am ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the planning board hereby accepts the request of India Food Market LLC to withdraw the application for special permit pursuant to section 4.2.6.2.1 supermarket of the Burlington zoning bylaw for property at 207 Cambridge Street, units C and D, without prejudice, as requested by the applicant in an email dated March 24th, 2021.
Madam Chair, can I just add a couple questions here, because I guess I didn't get a chance. Yeah, thanks. So we had the applicant who's got some refrigeration units. I think there were 5 of them behind the building that were not permitted, right? So wouldn't we see that applicant in again for the permit of those, or are they just going to cover it on the entire site plan?
We're looking for that to be covered in the entire site plan. The applicant can certainly take part in the discussion, but we want, as we usually want for sites, we want one site plan to be coordinated with all tenants for all activities on the site.
Okay. So normally we don't do that, right? Normally if there's a little, if there's one person in there, we say, well, we don't want to hurt this person with the rest of the site. So that's kind of I would say that's not something we normally do. This is something that is new for us, but I'm in favor of it, by the way, that we do say, let's look at that whole site when a particular applicant comes in. So, yeah, so he would be, so I'm trying to understand the kind of the process for this. So normally we have an applicant come in and we approve, let's say the refrigeration units, and where his trash is and things like that on a per applicant basis. But in this case, he's withdrawing and we're going to approve that different applicant based on a site plan of another applicant in the same building. Is that correct?
So the site plan it needs to be generated for the drainage issues that the property owner himself needs to fix. We have asked the property owner to coordinate with the other tenants to follow up with all the things that have happened. I mean, usually if a tenant comes in, they're asking us to do something, not asking us, and then there's all this stuff that has been done that was never permitted. So, I mean, usually we don't necessarily play this kind of catch-up game, but in this case, but even if a tenant comes in and says, I want to put in these condensers, I want to put in this dumpster, we have them update the record plan. So we have a record approved plan for every site that we have development in Burlington. And it's one plan, not all these different plans for a dumpster here and a condenser there. So what we're asking for the property owner to coordinate with the applicant on this single site plan to address all of the other things. So all of any of the dumpsters that are out in the back that aren't enclosed, that are never permitted, they're on the site plan. The condensers in the back, they're on the site plan. The air conditioning units behind the restaurant need to be on the site plan. You need to approve them or they need to be removed because they were never properly permitted in the first place.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's where we are.
So we had a motion. Do you want
Second. A second Mike's motion?
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impella,
Yes.
Member Clark Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, moving on. Our next item is item 7P, a public hearing, continued public hearing, an application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 4.3.2.8, maintenance shops, power plants, machine shops, and similar structures to support permitted uses of the zoning bylaw, 60 Blanchard Road, Azure Clean Rooms on Demand, Burlington LLC is the applicant. And who is here representing Azure?
So I'll just take that one.
Okay.
I don't think Christine's still here, nor she doesn't need to be.
Okay.
But originally, they had looked to do a cogeneration plant instead of a natural gas generator. If you remember when we approved Azure, we held this one off because they hadn't decided yet. They have decided they do not want to do the cogeneration plant, so therefore they do not need the special permit. They are moving forward with the natural gas powered generator, which we did approve in what we approved previously. And we said, if you still want to do it, leave it open. If you decide not to, we'll withdraw it. So that's what you're seeing right here. You're seeing that withdrawal. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had to mute because the dog was misbehaving again. I'm back though. All right. All right, I think this is pretty straightforward, but so I'm just going to ask, are there any members of the board that want to make a comment or ask a question? Please raise your hand or shout out. All right, so everybody's feeling good about this? All right. Are there any members of the public that want to weigh in, ask a question? No. Okay. All right. We are moving tonight. I guess we're ready for a motion on this.
Motion. Okay. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. The planning board hereby accepts the request of Azure Clean Rooms on Demand, Burlington LLC, to withdraw the application for a special permit pursuant to section 4.3.2.8, maintenance shops, power plants, machine shops, and similar structures to support permitted uses of the Burlington zoning bylaw for property at 60 Blanchard Road without prejudice as requested by the applicant's attorney in an email dated March 29th, 2021.
Second.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impella,
Yes.
Member Clark Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. The next item on our agenda is item number 9, minutes for March 18th, 2021. Are there any members that are not able to vote on these minutes tonight? Great, okay. Then I am looking for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of March 18th, 2021.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Do we need a roll call for this?
Nope, Kristen says no.
Okay, then, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any, anybody want to say nay, or anyone want to abstain? All right, then 7-0 for minutes. March 18th, 2021. And I again want to commend Brady and Don for keeping us up to date on our minutes. We're doing such a good job. They're doing such a good job. We've never been this up to date before, at least not since I've been on the board. So it's wonderful. Thank you both very much. Okay, did anybody have any new business that they wanted to bring forward at this time? All right, great. Then I'm ready for another motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Chairman LaRue,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Impemba,
Yes.
Member Clerk Raymond,
Yes.
Member Covino,
Yes.
Member Espejo,
Yes.
Member Gaffney,
Yes.
Member Rappaport.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, guys. Great job.